A couple of days ago when we spoke, I was thinking I might have a problem in my router. So you suggested I try it away from the house, away from the router. And I did that yesterday. Uh, it didn't seem to make any difference. I still couldn't get in with just the phone. In other words, trying to go through the phone miles and miles away from here. So I know there wasn't anything going on. So for some reason, I just don't get any activity on my Pi-Star dashboard. And I think I've got my code plug right. Uh, I keep going back and forth, changing things. I'm on 3101 right now. I've tried every setting I can think of. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Okay.
Jim, you want to
I
take
could
it?
respond. Two things come to mind. It's a little hard to see without looking at the dashboard, but two things. One, you need a decent internet connection. Almost anything will do if you have internet with Comcast or the Verizon or anybody else. That needs to be set up. And I'm assuming that if you look on the config page at the bottom, that it shows that you are indeed connected to your internet.
Yeah, this interface is working.
Okay, that's good. That's a plus. Now the second thing is you have to be connected to a talk group. Okay.
Audio.
And the talk groups, there's thousands of them. One that is very busy and you can almost always hear activity on is 3100. It's a little too busy for my taste, but it's great for a demo to demonstrate the capabilities and just make some contacts and chat with people all over the US and beyond. So that's a function of you have to transmit on that particular talk group, okay? And it assumes that you have your code plug set up and that you are indeed transmitting. When you transmit, do you see anything on the dashboard?
No, I don't. I have a TYT UV380.
Okay.
For instance, when I transmit into the Parrot or the Echo, whatever you call it,
Yeah.
I see, or when I key up into the other groups, I see the bars come up like it's receiving something back, and I see the little D right here and with the right pointing arrow. I don't know what that's showing me, but it looks like something's trying to come back, but no audio comes.
Right. So the first thing is to check all the basics, and to make sure that you're transmitting simplex on that same specific frequency. Okay.
Yes.
So on your radio, I'm going to make it up. Let's say you're at 438.000. You've got to have the Pi-Star set up for 438, and your radio has to be set up for 438, and it's got to be simplex. That's the first thing. Okay. The second thing is in the code plug, you have to have the appropriate talk group in there. It sounds to me like a very simple code plug issue. You know what I mean? Something is very simple is wrong in your code plug.
Well, let me ask you, why do I not see activity on my dashboard?
Because something's not set up right. It's almost as if either the frequency is not the same, and what frequency are you using?
433. Hang on. I don't know. I just checked that and I can't remember that. But I am the radio and the Pi Star on the same frequency.
Okay,
And
that's a good thing.
I am when if you don't have your radio on at all,
Yeah,
should you be able to see traffic on the dashboard?
you have to be connected to a particular talk group, okay? And there has to be activity on that talk group. So
And that's a function of the radio.
that's a function
No.
of the radio and the hotspot talking to each other. You know what I mean? So it's you have to have. It sounds like a code plug issue. You know what I mean? Without seeing what you got set up, and it sounds like something very simple that would be
But
easy to fix.
Even with the radio, if he has a static talk group set up, even with the radio off, you should see some kind of activity on that dashboard. So I don't even think he's connecting to a network.
How do you get into a talk group without using your radio?
All right. If I can just, I think this is very helpful. Jim, and good morning, Neil, please, Jim, WA2UMP, Neil's one of our what I consider to be subject matter experts. I'm just a facilitator. Where's the best place, Jim, for all of us to say, here's a nice stepwise setup? Because what the other part of the puzzle is, Mo's has a covert spot. Remember the next gen guy who was selling those covert spots?
Yeah.
And that's MMDVM, Pi Star based, up K2BHM. His heart just leapt because I said Pi Star, and he's an expert on Raspberry Pi. How can we build our group coherent knowledge of the steps? I just want to ask you about a guy named, I think, W1MSG in Massachusetts. He's done some YouTube videos that
he's good
by setting up and that means that each of us could help. If we could go over to Moses' house, many of us, I think we would sit down and do it. With the pandemic, and I also want to post on our website a platinum version of, hey, you want to check out your code plug? Because if we're getting here, and then to take into account Neil's point, where should we go for the platinum version of that stepwise process? And there's two different things on code plug. It's not the zones and the contacts and the channels I'm talking about. You're deeper in the programming of at least the radio that Mose has. I know that radio, I have that radio. And that is this setup where it's talking to other parts, okay? Where do we go for that?
We just checked one other thing, Mose. What server you on? Look at your Pi Star dashboard.
Yeah, that's a good
See
point.
what server you on.
Well,
I was going to say, even
right
just
now,
a screenshot would help at this point. If he could send us screenshots of his dashboard and config.
All right, Neil, Bob, everybody, this little, see that? If you have a comment, could you please use that? I think it goes away. I won't take mine away because we've got to get a protocol here so we're not doubling, and it's not helpful when we do. All right. So let me go back to Jim's. I asked him a question. Let's please let him answer it. Platinum version.
Okay. Geez, really what you need is a dirt simple code plug. The problem is, one that has like one repeater in it and one talk group. Okay, maybe two talk groups, one for Parrot, one for 3100, maybe one for STEM so we can get on the net, and one for a disconnect. Very dirt simple. From that, you can build and add to it. One zone. You know what I mean? So somebody locally is going to have to build that. This gets slightly more complicated because there's a lot of different radios out there on the market. Mose mentioned that he had the UV is it 380, the
Yeah.
updated
Yes.
dual bander, which is a very good radio. You can't go wrong with that. You need a code plug for that works. And they comment about sending a screenshot of your of what the dashboard looks like. That would give us a lot of information. It could be something very simple. Bob brought up, he asked what server you're connected to. That's another thing to check. You know, a typical, you may have mentioned 3101. A lot of folks connect to 3102. Either one of those is good. You know, some folks like the Canadian server. Stick to 3102 or 3101, and you should see a connection. If you don't see a connection, that's a problem. But this sounds like something very simple. You know, one or two very simple problems. If you could send us a screenshot right now, take a screenshot and send it, and Paul could send it out to the group. You know, in lieu of the screenshot, if you were to hold your camera, and I don't know how bad or good or bad that would look in front of the dashboard, try and hold it steady. You know, we could get some clues.
Okay,
But
thank you, Jim. Let me ask K2LD and then NDG. Jim summarized your points, but let's make sure if you're thinking aligned with Jim's, Bob, your point about what was your point? K2LD?
I said to check the server because that's a setting you have to put into your hotspot, not into your radio.
Right.
So you have to make sure that that is correct onto a currently active server. I use 3102. It seems to be fine. I've been on 3108. There's a bunch of different ones. There's thousands of them, really. And as long as you are definitely connected to Wi-Fi, you definitely have an active server, your frequencies are the same, and you transmit an active talk group, the thing should come alive. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Right.
So thank you.
Basics you got to check.
NDG, Neil, good morning. Are you driving? I don't know if I should acknowledge you, but please come in, Neil.
I am in motion, but I'm not touching my phone.
Go ahead, Neil.
No, we know he's on Wi-Fi. We know that the hotspot's up and running because he can get to the dashboard. He wouldn't be able to get that far if that wasn't the case. So, yeah, we just I start with the basics, analyze the settings of the Pi-Star first, and then go from there. I think he has a pretty good concept to set up the radio.
Thank you, Neil. All right, Mose, let me ask you to hang on now because I do want to make sure we get to some of the other interests. Again, the interests and the questions on our core group of 15 or so range from why do I want to be on DMR and who will I talk to how do I get this code plug working? So we'll cycle back to you, Mose, and you can tell us whether you can send us a screenshot. But Jim, Bob, Neil, I want to thank you because I think you've already combined wisdom has empowered us to move forward on a further Zoom meeting if we can't get together and while we're socially distancing. Let me turn to Kate, KD2RYD, Glenford above Shokan. I will tell you, Jim, that Kate's a physicist. She has a lot of knowledge. So technically, she's actually herded atoms. And Neil is an IT expert. I'm so happy to have all of us assembled, the musicians, photographers, but we're all striving to learn from one another's issues right now. So Kate, your question, what is on your mind about, because I know you have your radio, you'd like to be more active on DMR.
Yeah, sure. And remember, I herded electrons as well as
electrons, not
yeah.
atoms. Oh,
no.
Anybody can herd an
stay
atom.
where they are. They can vibrate around a little bit, but they can stay where they are. It's
right. Electrons.
Moving the electrons around that we're all really interested in, right? We don't. Yeah. So I have an Anytone 878. Great. My hotspot, I keep forgetting what it's called. I got it from Lone Star from N5BOC. So I got the shield that goes on top of a Pi Zero, put the two together, put the image on. It's easy to get going, but there's a lot of very, very, very simple things that stopped it from working, and lots of people.
Hey, I'm
Oh.
sorry to call. So
Uh-oh.
I was been on the phone, so
Maybe mute all.
Yeah, who is that?
It's Neil. Was it Neil or not?
I got him. I got him muted.
Okay, cool.
All
Yeah.
right.
So I've got the whole thing running, and then I am hoping this is the question you're referring to. It's why do I even need it, and what am I going to do with it? And and then I got to thinking, why do I even need a radio at all? I mean, I've got this radio connecting to another radio, connecting to a Wi-Fi hotspot to go on the internet. I'm kind of being not rhetorical, but I'm kind of just being provocative. It's like, why do I even need it at all, and what am I going to do on it? I'm hoping that's the question you're referring to, Paul.
Yeah, well, there's a technical part. You're saying I don't need a radio. I can use my computer to talk.
Yeah.
And is that a question, Jim, you hear, and Neil and Bob? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then anybody else. I mean,
Okay, I could respond to that. Well, your hotspot is like a little mini repeater. Okay, and it has milliwatts. It's only good within, say, 1,000 foot or so. Technically, to answer your question, you could buy a device that could hook up to your computer from Northwestern that would allow you could buy a dongle that would allow you just to use your computer, and there would be no RF involved. The beauty of the radio is that you can also talk with other repeaters. You can also talk simplex, so it has more function to it. You can access repeaters, talk simplex, and the hotspot. So that's the beauty of that, and it also allows you to get involved, and you're a physicist, and get involved in radio RF communications and all of the interesting aspects of that and phenomenon that you can observe in radio propagation. So there's a way to circumvent it without any radio, but using the radio gives you added functionality, the ability to also go to a repeater that may be miles away, talk directly to somebody else's radio, which could be miles away. So it gives you have more power for very little money. So that's really the story. And it is personal preference. You could circumvent that and just buy a dongle and talk on your computer microphone, and you'd be on DMR or D-Star. And it's a matter of preference. I find that a little bit, that's not my cup of tea. You know what I mean? I like the ability to communicate over long distances through the radio waves. And DMR is only one area of radio that I'm interested in. I talk on HF, I talk 2-meter simplex. There's all kinds of things you could do. Bounce radio waves off of meteorite trails, bounce them off the moon, satellites. This is just one little piece of the enchilada.
So for someone who's maybe somewhere where there's no DMR repeater, they're mostly stuck at home, can't get out a lot, and just want a way to be able to talk to people around the world, and perhaps they can't put up an HF antenna and do the things that maybe they used to do, then maybe just having a dongle that goes into a computer and allows them to get onto DMR and talk to lots of other ham radio people like they might have used to over the years. Maybe that's quite a good use without setting up a hotspot, without buying the radio. Because if that's all someone's doing, that the radio is kind of a little bit pointless, because I could just use my Bluetooth headphones connecting to my computer and get on DMR if that's all I was going to do. I'm more thinking of someone else and why they might do it. That might be quite a good use for someone who need and is stuck at home.
That's true. The radio does allow you to talk within 1,000 foot, way much further than your Bluetooth headset is good for within the room, maybe within the house if you're lucky. This will allow you to talk within 1,000 foot. You can also set up a higher power hotspot and cover miles. I guess personally, I find it's a kind of a dead end, and this is personal opinion. just going with.
You've been muted, Jim.
Am I back on?
Yep.
I did that. Could you back up? Could you back up? Neil, could you mute yourself? I know this is against your better nature, but
Oh, no, I self-muted before, Paul.
yeah, all right. But now
It came off when my brother called me. I apologize.
no, all right. If you could mute yourself and then unmute yourself when you talk, okay? We're getting road noise and everything. Thanks, Neil. 4 or 5 sentences back when your answer. I beg your pardon. Please, Jim, UMP, go ahead.
Yeah. I think that it's a matter of personal preference, and that's kind of called a network radio, and a radio being kind of a misnomer that where you're bypassing the radio and you go directly to that. And some folks use that and like that. I kind of personally find that a bit of a dead end because it doesn't lead to anything else in radio. Like using satellites, you like talking simplex, like going through the repeaters. You'll need that in times of, we're in a pandemic now, things could get better or worse. For emergency communications, the radio will be better. So personally, I find that the quote unquote network radio with the Bluetooth a bit limiting. And that's kind of the general opinion, but there are other people that prefer that mode, and that's one option you could do.
Thank you.
Okay.
So
Really cool.
Kate,
Yeah.
I just wonder, I think it is a provocative question, and I feel that as we have new members enter our club, maybe it's an important question if they're just rushing to purchase a radio. Yeah, the radio may be only 100, but then there's the hotspot, and then there's the anxiety, the frustration, and so forth. I'm hearing from the question you asked and the answer so far, maybe we should say, well, what do you want to get out of it? So I think, and AD2AH, who's going to get a video and an audio, thanks to Guy, TLF, of this meeting, that continues to be his question. He's chomping to buy something, but maybe he needs to know the alternatives. So I thank you for raising that. Let me just ask K2LD and anybody else who wants to chime in on the issue of, do I need a radio? Why should I get a radio? I think we could cover that issue now and move on. Anybody else? And again, if you'd like to say something, you can hit under reactions, your little thumbs up, and then I can recognize you. Bob, K2LD?
Okay. First off, haven't seen you in a while, Jim. Haven't seen you with that growth on your face there. Quite a collection.
I retired and no more corporate dress codes.
Good for you. Good for you.
So I'm taking advantage of that.
As far as the economics of getting into it, buying a network radio is going to be more expensive than buying a cheap radio and a hotspot. So you're better off with the radio and a hotspot. At least you have the functionality of using it anyplace else. What I personally use the radio for is places where there is no good repeaters. If I'm traveling in a car, I could still get onto the same talk groups that I usually get on. I always used to get on the North Star, but since the time moved with that, I have no ability to get on there because of my work schedule. There's no way I'm going to get on at 8 o'clock if I work till 9. So that kind of wipes me out on that particular one. But it's the variety of interests that is available in DMR that is really the golden ring when you go around the merry-go-round there. The interests are so varied and worldwide that you can pick what you want to listen to, and something will be available every single day. It's just a matter of picking what you want to do. So if it was just a matter of a meeting, like for example, I'm going up to Lake George for the weekend, I won't be able to meet our normal morning chat on the 835, on the 805. If we had a DMR set up, I would be able to catch it because distance is no longer a boundary. You can go wherever you want and still connect up with the people you want. As long as you have, everybody has a common meeting room to go to, then it's going to happen. So that's why I use the DMR. I think it's a fantastic thing, but I also use the other modes as well. So adjunct to it. And that's what I got. So back to you, Paul.
Thank you. Additional comments, questions, concerns around this whole issue where you see we've been down to the code plug and the programming, the radio, and now we're up here. But that's all of the interest in this group. On that topic, any other questions, comments, or concerns, or we'll move on. Hal, please go ahead, Hal.
Yeah, I'd like to know why not use D-Star or C4 FM? And the other question was, would this DMR work in the Adirondacks, in the places where I have trouble using a satellite sometimes, satellite phone? Would a DMR work in places where you can't get good reception? Over.
I can answer that question. Okay, well, there are a number of DMR repeaters in the Adirondacks, and they tailor to, I know that the New York State Talk Group, Upstate New York Talk Group is all pushed up there. It will depend, even though they have mountaintop repeaters, it will depend if you can access them. It's an issue of, a matter of connectivity. Quite a few repeaters in upstate New York. There's maps that you can take a look at to see where they are. I know, for example, Bob mentioned Lake George, and there are quite a few repeaters along through Lake George. We used to have people come in on the net from there. So it's like any other, you'd have to look on the map to see if they're accessible. Now, you mentioned there are other digital modes, C4FM and D-Star, and I have a D-Star radio. I have 2 C4FM radios. I like both modes, and again, I'm going to give you my personal opinion that DMR has much more activity and a lot more talk groups, and it's definitely cheaper than D-Star. D-Star will cost you $500 or so, maybe a little bit less nowadays, but it's the most expensive mode. And I don't mean to insult anybody. If you enjoy D-Star, some folks get on that and they swear by it, but the protocol is not very robust. You're constantly losing sync. As you go up and down hills in your car, you'll lose, it goes in and out. DMR is more robust. Now, C4FM is a good protocol, has very good voice quality. I like it. Not that many repeaters use it. I'm looking at my DMR radio now, and I'm sorry, my C4FM radio. And I use that mostly for analog, but I do have 2 C4FM repeaters within range. Not a lot of activity in that. If folks come on with a Yaesu radio and they're within range here at Cape Cod, I ask them to switch over to C4FM, and we have a C4FM simplex. I'm right next to Nickerson State Park. People camp out there. Sometimes people get on with a Yaesu radio. I ask them to switch over to simplex, and we have a C4FM contact, which has very nice voice quality. So I have all 3 modes. If you're looking to get involved with one, I would recommend DMR, and then the other 2 are kind of secondary. I think, because there's C4FM, not a lot of activity. And D-Star, it's an older protocol. Again, if you enjoy it, more power to you, not to take anything away, keep using it. But I would say that for a number of reasons that you get the most bang for your buck and talk to more people with DMR.
Thank you, Jim. Kenny, K2KRP. Do I have to, can you unmute yourself, or, okay, I see unmute here. Let me see if I can,
There we go. Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. So is there a consensus here that DMR is the way that we should go as a club? I mean, I know some of you have DMR. I'm sitting here looking at the Bridgecom website while I'm listening to all this, because I'm reading an awful lot of information about it. I have a D-Star radio, an ICOM ID51, which I still haven't figured out how to work the D-Star part of it, even though I think it's programmed right, but I've never talked to anybody on it. And so I'm curious, does that seem to be the direction that we all want to go? It's certainly, what I'm hearing is that everybody seems to be kind of focusing, especially with what Jim just told us, that DMR seems to be the way to go. Do we all kind of feel that way? And then what would be the next step? Also, there's not a lot of DMR radios out there. So anybody with recommendations on the type of radio? I know that, Kate, you mentioned you have a Bridgecom, and the radio that you have is the one, yeah, that's the one that I'm looking at. I actually placed an order, including their plug and play. And then when I started to hear our conversations, I canceled the order because I said, well, maybe we're not going to go that direction. Maybe we're going to do something else. So why am I buying this? Now I'm wondering whether I should call them when we hang up and get it, because I'm chomping at the bit to get into this. I'm also looking at QRP radios, and Neil kind of put me in a certain direction with that. So for someone like myself, where do we think we want to go with all of this?
Okay, thank you, Kenny. So 2 questions, and we'll get to both of them. Do we all feel, and Jim, I know you're not a member of our club, but we certainly have your thought. That's a club issue, and of course anybody living in our region, and then type of radio. Can we focus on Kenny's first question? Neil, let me turn to you. I know you have some thoughts on that.
All right, am I unmuted?
You're unmuted, sir.
All right, first let me apologize. Earlier I had self-muted and I got a phone call which somehow automatically unmuted me locally. And I think one of you remote muted me and then somehow unmuted me, and that's when things got kind of crazy. So I do apologize for that. I am not driving at this point, as you can see. So yeah, just to add on to what Jim said, D-Star it's a high investment to get into. You will find very few clubs at this point investing in D-Star repeater equipment. And another reason is that the complexity of configuring a D-Star radio is a little beyond a lot of us. I do consider myself to be a pretty good tech guy, and the only reason why I haven't configured my D-Star radio correctly at this point is because I haven't had the time to devote to it. I know it's going to take me a day or so of reading and Google videos and to get it up and running. I thought I had one of mine configured, and I just found out recently that it turns out that the repeater I'm trying to raise people on, according to I forget if it was Jim, no, I'm Bob who was talking about it, or someone, the Carmel repeater, I guess, is pretty dead and is not the one to use. And I can't hit Valhalla from my regular D-Star radio without driving a little further south. So D-Star for me is an expense for a lot of people. It's a level of complexity we don't need to deal with. DMR is a completely different concept for a lot of ham radio people, especially if you're used to programming analog radios. But the methods came from the commercial radios, and anybody who's worked with commercial radios before understands talk groups and zones and things like that. And that's where that terminology comes from. And as I've said, I think I said it last week too, once you get the basic concept, it does just click and it will make sense. System fusion, and I was talking about this the other day when we had like a bit of a 805 seminar on this stuff. And the only reason why Yaesu's system fusion is as popular as it is right now is because, as I said, they were literally giving it away. They went around to a lot of prominent clubs that had repeaters around the country and gave them repeaters. And some of them then after that offered them more equipment, or to other clubs half price or ridiculously cheap. And System Fusion has remained a low cost entry and a very low technical ability to get it working. It's very simple, but it's not as prominent, not as highly available out there. There aren't as many repeaters that you can hit. The repeater itself, Yaesu's System Fusion repeater, is mediocre. It's not a great repeater. The early versions were very, very primitive, and a lot of the clubs bought them just as spares. But DMR has kind of embraced ham radio and vice versa. And it's kind of hit us on all demographic levels, where the early traditionalists, the people who embraced it first and started DMR Mark, were very Motorola centric, and even to the point where they don't allow hotspots to connect directly to their network. They only allow Motorola repeaters on their network. But that's what sparked Brandmeister and then some of these smaller networks now. And this is what ham radio is about. And I kind of think that DMR embraces the idea and the attitudes of ham radio better than any of these other formats. And the hotspot certainly gives us a lot more options. I could have brought mine with me today and used it in the car. So,
Yeah.
and if you have a good, reliable internet source, it works.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Neil. And
Kenny, do you feel that gets to your question? For DMR being, in Neil's thinking, that's important, a worthwhile investment for the club?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. No, absolutely. I'm looking, as Neil was talking, I'm looking to see how many repeaters there are in New York State. DMR has 77 repeaters in New York State. Fusion has 42. And D-Star has like 50. So DMR certainly has more repeaters. And I think that really kind of clarifies it. It seems like DMR, once you understand the code plugs and once you understand programming, I think that just seems to be the way to go.
Okay. And I think we know that if the Omar Club, the Overlook Mountain Club, were to do it, that would require, but if there's a consensus, we can go back to get Dave, K2JLV. By the way, he contributed a nice a deck of PowerPoint slides that I'll be posting right after this on the web. And I want to thank Dave. He'll probably be listening to an audio that Guy's doing or something. And Bob, I think that's your sympathy too. You're thinking a DMR repeater that the club could somehow mount would be helpful to all of us. Is that correct?
Absolutely. At least we'll have something local in the area that we could go to without a hotspot. If we're traveling, if we're mobile, we don't need the Wi-Fi. We don't need anything else. And it would give us an asset. We did have a DMR repeater locally in Kingston until it was removed because it was only a loaner, and it served us well during that time. That's how I was able to get onto Jim's talk every night at 9 o'clock on Tuesdays. But
8 o'clock now.
8 o'clock now, but I get out at 9, and that's how I got on, because you always used to ask for mobile and international check-ins first.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So
it would be a good idea to get.
I think that question we can move on from, because I see the energy here. We'll take action. Neil is looking into whether there is a used one down in Limemark. Where is BCC? Did he have to leave? Yeah, he's an Orange County. Oh, no, there you are. Joe, W2BCC from Orange County. Didn't you tell us that the Orange County Aries Races put up a DMR computer, then took it down, or doesn't operate it now? Could you fill us in on that? Joe, do you hear me?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute there, Paul.
Okay.
Spacebar didn't seem to want to do it. Yes, Orange County Races has 2 DMR repeaters. One is in Grahamsville, the other's on Mount Beacon. They are turned off, though. The DMR portion is turned off because it was adding confusion. Did you look at the Mount Beacon DMR repeater that I mentioned to you the other day? Sent you that note?
All right, thank you, Joe. I did. I can't hit it. I don't know why. Maybe I hit everything else. I can participate in the D-Star. So if we move towards a DMR repeater for our club, what should we learn from the Aries Races experience that will help us to avoid confusion? We're here about reducing confusion, not adding confusion.
Well, I wasn't instrumental in buying it. We had somebody work for Nicomco that could buy equipment. I think each one of the repeaters cost $6,000.
Oh.
And we didn't buy them. Indian Point gave us a grant for $20,000. So we used that to buy 2 repeaters. So they were essentially free. It was a big hot topic at the time. People bought radios and nobody's using DMR down here. And that's why I was mentioning Mount Beacon. The issue with Mount Beacon is the guy that's got the repeater up there, there's no internet access. So what he's doing is he's remoting in some way. I don't know if he's using a microwave or what, but for a long time he had link problems. So you might be able to hit the repeater, but whether or not you can get out to the talk groups or not, I'm not sure right at the moment.
Okay, that's, yeah. So we have a responsibility, but maybe there's a cheap one available in Orange County.
Well, I think they bought First Cabin because they had the opportunity to, and they've been pretty good repeaters, and they're Motorola repeaters.
Okay.
So, you know, that's about the extent of my knowledge.
No, but that's very, very helpful to us. I wanted Rob, RWS, to go, but he's had to leave. Rob had a question about getting on. Neil was helping him. I think that's probably resolved. Neil, did I see your finger this go up, or was that a comment, or you have a thought, Neil?
I was going to make a comment, but I realized I left my hand up. At least it said it was still up.
Okay.
There was a notice sent out a while back. There's actually 2 DMR repeaters on Mount Beacon. And there was a notice sent out that the other one had managed to reconnect to the network. I don't know how true that is. I have some talk groups programmed into a radio. It sounds like I'm keying something up, but I'm trying to remember. I think I keyed it up the other day and did see my name show up in the, there's a Bronx Turbo DMR activity page. You're probably familiar with that, where you can see if you're actually hitting the network. So I think they're back online now. NY4Z also has a Beacon repeater, which I have not programmed, and I'm not sure if it's operational. Also, I did get a reply back from my Long Island people. The club itself does not have any spare equipment, but they referred me to a couple of other people that might. So I'm gonna see if they come up with something. One of them is a guy who pretty much travels all around the country in his retirement, going to Hamfests and scouring Craigslist and eBay and collects equipment. So he comes up with stuff once in a while.
Thank you very much. You can see, Jim, we've got a great group of people here. We just, and resources. We have Jim. I don't know how long we'll have him. And I take K2LD and NDG for granted probably, but I appreciate them very much. They know that. We all appreciate them. But while we have Jim with us, which is so special, Jim, you've really added value here and helped me in my understanding. We have time for another question or two, and then maybe we'll go on our way. But do I see a finger up, or somebody who'd like to ask something or comment on something? Please go.
Yeah, the on Mount Beacon, I always used to use the K2ATY repeater, and that worked well. Now I'm way beyond that range now that I'm here on Cape Cod, but anytime I pass through the Mount Beacon area, I use that repeater and it worked well. And yes, as somebody mentioned, I think there's a Bronx Turbo repeater that's also set up there. I've never used that one.
For those who are brand new considering, and also Joe 82AH couldn't be with us, and his big question was computers, the role of computers. And, but let me say that while I have the same feeling that many of you have, certainly Jim, WA2UMP, it's not all of radio for me. I appreciate the DMR because there's a little bit of RF between my radio and the hotspot. Sometimes the hotspot's in my pocket or my phone, but I do appreciate it. And I wouldn't get so much joy out of a dongle. I can't explain that, but I'm only a psychologist. What can I tell you? But the larger picture is the people I meet on DMR, and the idea that if Kate moves away, we could have a once a week net and we could still gather while staying apart, or not because of the pandemic, but because we all will move on and Bob could talk to us. So for me, it's the social side and the fascinating people. You'll meet a lot of hams on DMR who are now in home HOA areas, homeowners association, and they're no longer in England. We have a friend, I call him a friend because he is, who's in an adult home, a senior home, and without DMR, but he's had 50 years, he's a ham, Trevor, in Hull on the Humber. He sang a birthday greeting to my wife last year. So, but computers do add to the fun of DMR. It's not just that you program and then leave it. I like to watch the Bronx Turbo and others. We'll put some postings up about that. I think Rob said we shouldn't talk religion, politics, or operating systems. It's not a Mac versus OS or Windows issue or Linux. It's whether we continue to use the computer. I don't think it's a necessary part after a while, although the Pi Star is a computer, Jim. I'm looking up here at you. Jim BHM, but WA2UMP, where do you, how dependent does someone have to be on a computer? It's, for me, it's fun having the computer to watch Bronx Turbo that Neil mentioned. Do a lot of the DMR people use it, or are they truck drivers and they're people on the road? What's your experience? Because you talk to people all the time about their DMR experience. Where's the computer fit in?
Well, you need a computer for two reasons. One is that the CPS, you'll need that to program the radio. And I have to say that that only works on Windows. So if you're an Apple person, I'm going to show you a cheap computer that I paid $150. I don't know if you could see it right there. Okay, that's for the upstairs. I bought that Asus for $150. It runs Windows 10, and you can program on that. So if you're purely Apple, you may need to spend $150 or $200 for that. The other reason you would want to use your computer is for NetWatch. And NetWatch is a page you access over the internet. You can use your phone for that too. And that shows you who's on. If you hit push to talk, you'll see that you're transmitting, and you'll see who's streaming across the network. So it fits into that. Most DMR people enjoy computers. You don't have to be a real expert, as long as you have some very basic hands-on information, which most people do nowadays. You know, to get on, you don't need anything beyond getting what it would require to get on a Zoom meeting to meet that requirement, level of computer skills.
Thank you, Jim. Kate? Kate? KD2RYD? Mute. Can we all hear each other?
You may have to unmute. You may have to unmute her.
Okay.
Yeah, she's showing that she's muted.
Yes, I agree. So let's see if I can do that without muting all the rest of you. All right. I think, Kate.
Oh, so frustrating. I was trapped. I was only going to say, I posted a couple of questions in the chat. One of them is, do you actually need a code plug at all? Can you not just program what you need in through the radio? Can I not just put in how to connect to the hotspot and put in one talk group with, whatever that's needed?
So
that's one
I could answer that. Yeah. Theoretically, you don't need a code plug, but in actuality, you need a code plug. Okay. So you can start with something very simple. Yeah. And that's the most convenient way. Some radios allow you to keep reprogramming. If you want to choose talk groups, you just program, change it on the fly. Most people use a simple code plug, and
Yeah.
once you once you become familiar with your code plug, it becomes something routine and simple.
Yeah. So I find on my radio, as far as I know, I can put in whatever I need to get myself going. And so I'm more asking that in a way to sort of let someone know that demystify the code plug a little bit. I mean, it's just simplifying what you might otherwise program in for your radio. And if you're worried about the PC Mac thing, then actually I can program enough in to get going from that.
Yes.
It doesn't seem any different than I do on my other radio with Chirp. And then the second question I had that I posted in the chat, and maybe if anyone else wants to put questions in the chat, it's a good way of not having to speak, is if we want to use a talk group to chat with each other, can we just pick an empty number, or do we have to register it, or can we get away with that?
No, they're public domain in effect. So just be aware that some talk groups, maybe some people consider they're semi-private. It's for like my club that's out in, Kalamazoo or wherever. But no, they're all public. You don't need permission. But it's like coming into a room, if other people are talking or a repeater, courtesy and common sense prevail. But so nobody owns a talk group.
Awesome. So if we all just found a number that we felt was free, we could settle on that, and then that could be our Mid-Hudson Mornings DMR
You
room.
can,
and we're aware that someone else might turn up, but that happens anyway.
If you had a second ID, okay, or if you took your own ID and appended 2 numbers to it, like your 7-digit number, and you put the number 98 on the end of it, that could become a talk group. And as long as other people knew about it and you publicized it, like out here in Cape Cod, and then you could request a shorter number, as long as you could show some activity. It used to be you just asked for it, like STEM, we just requested, they gave it to us. They would have taken it away if there was no activity. But to answer your question, you could create your own talk group with your 7-digit number by adding 2 more, or if you had 2 7-digit numbers, you could donate 1 to the club, or the club could get 1. And as long as everybody knew what it was, there you go.
Great, let's do it.
It's that simple. It's just really a spot in an area of memory in the server. That's all it is.
Okay, cool.
That's very, very, very helpful. Boy, Jim, you're covering a lot of ground for us. Rob, I'm so pleased to see you back. I mentioned you that you were on the cusp of resolving an issue that I think you already had resolved in your head, but it was you had been an accomplished user in Manhattan using the repeater on the top of the Empire State Building, and you were wondering about the complexity of switching over all your investment in your code plug to operate something else. Maybe if you could just share that with everyone and with the UMP as well. I'd like to get a final answer on that on your behalf and mine. Rob? Rob is muted. All right. Here he is. I think I can unmute him. Rob?
Muted by host.
Right. All right. I don't know why that happens, but I would never mute. Well,
can you hear me now?
But not you, Rob. Go ahead. Your experience. Did you hear my question?
Yes. So thank you very much. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I dropped out and I couldn't get back in. I finally worked here. I'd switched locations. I've got 2 DMR radios. I was given a code plug by both through the New York City Marathon. I also was given it by our club in New York. It is a very comprehensive code set up. I've got tons of repeaters or tons of talk groups locally and worldwide. It's a wonderful code plug, but it was specific to whatever repeater I was hitting in Manhattan. I believe not only just the Empire State Building, a bunch of them. Anyway, I have 2 different radios. I've downloaded 2 different programs. I can now hook them in. It's identified with the computer. I can see my both code plugs one at a time, obviously. And I want to adapt that now to an RF Shark rather than hitting the repeater directly. And quite frankly, I'm not quite sure what to do. My RF Shark, I'm not sure if it works. I got one little red light and 3 green lights. I'm not quite sure what's happening, but I don't know how to modify my code plugs instead of hitting the direct repeater with an offset and a transmit and receive frequency. I now have to hit my RF Shark, and I don't know what setting to do to keep my code plug intact. Once I do that, I'll be happy to send it to the group. I think it's a kick-ass code plug.
Thank you, Rob. That's great. Jim, WA2UMP, please.
Sure. You'll need to add to your existing code plug, and it won't impact the existing code plug. So basically what you're going to do is just try adding one channel, okay? You're going to pick a simplex frequency, I'm going to make one up off the top of my head, 448. Make sure there's no repeater on it, and make sure you're not operating in the satellite band. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That'll be disallowed if you try to do that. But just pick a spare frequency like 448. Okay.
Yep.
Now it's going to be simplex. Okay. So you're setting it up just like the repeater, except now you have a simplex frequency. The receive and the transmit are the same, and now you're going to pick a talk group that you want to get on. And for example, STEM. Let me just write the number down. 31630. STEM would be 31630.
Okay.
That's the talk group. You can add additional talk groups. Okay. So if you were to add STEM 31630, that would allow you to get on the net that I run on Tuesday nights. Make sure you picked the appropriate talk group for in the code plug. Okay. And you would be both for receive and transmit. So now if you want to, if you like New York State, you would pick say 3136 would be New York State. Just pick the appropriate talk group. The talk groups that you're going to access on your hotspot may be a little different than the ones on some of them are going to be the same and some will be a little bit different. Okay, so start with a very simple one.
Okay, so we're almost there. That's the part I don't understand. So I pick an empty channel on my current code plug, and I put in 448 as a simplex. Got it. Now I transmit with the 448 on the simplex on my handheld to the Shark. Assuming the Shark is working, how the heck do I now get a different talk group when I'm only broadcasting on this thing simplex?
Each channel has, you got to put in multiple channels. So you have one channel for STEM on your hotspot. You have a second channel for New York State. You have a third channel for 3100. So if you're interested in 10 talk groups, set up 10 channels for your hotspot. Okay, start with just one.
So let me introduce one other concept here, is zone. So I'm in a zone that has a bunch of channels, that has a blank channel that now has a simplex frequency, and I'm talking on that. How then do I tune the radio to get a different talk group?
Okay, so let's say you have 10 channels for 10 talk groups. You put them in a zone, and you could call that zone hotspot 448, if you're going to put it on 448. Now, you should also have one channel in there that's a disconnect, and that would be 4000. You know how the talk groups all have different numbers? The New York would be 3136, okay? You're gonna have one for 4000, and that would be a disconnect. Ideally, if you want to keep everything clean, you should disconnect in between going from talk group A to talk group B. You know what I mean? You just transmit the 4000.
Jim and Rob, Let me ask Rob, number one, what is your radio that you're talking about? I know you have two. Which one? Pick one.
This the simplest one. I got a Retivas TR3. That's the generic.
Great. Now, in it, you have more than one zone or only one zone currently that hits the Empire State Building?
Well, that's the cool thing. I've got a bunch of zones.
All right. Can you take, I don't have, but I think the code plugs cross over, even though different. Jim, can you take a current zone that's terrific, but all of the channels in that zone are going to the Empire State Building? Can you do something equivalent to a save as? Zone 1, Empire State Building. It's got 16 channels.
Right.
Can I do a save as in some way and then say, but all of you guys who I know have been going through the Empire State Building, I want to put you into that hotspot 448, or can you do a save as?
Well, it's different. It's different. See, the repeaters are the repeaters, and the hotspot is the hotspot. So you want to, I would separate it and make a new zone and put the hotspot frequencies in there. Some of the talk groups that you go to on the repeater will be available through your hotspot and some won't. Okay?
Got it.
It's a subset, you know, that you'll be able, that are in common.
Okay.
Okay. Some of them are in common are like New York State, Upper New York State. One example that's not in common is 3100. That's a very busy talk group that very few repeaters carry because it's so busy. STEM won't be on your, it'll be on your, see, if it's a Brandmeister repeater, they're all in common, okay? But if it's a Motorola network, there's a subset that are available. Brandmeister carries everything that that your hotspot will.
So I've got both on mine. I got a zone for Brandmeister, I believe. Can I just go into every one of those data points after copying this thing and change the frequency to 448? Is that as simple as that?
Without seeing your code pub, probably, yeah. If it's a Brandmeister talk group, and add a few, you know, like 3100, because that's a very busy, that's, I think, the national talk group. Don't forget to put a 4000 in there, you know, like Zip you're going to, that's a disconnect. It's just like anything else except the talk group is 4000 and that disconnects it. Because if you go to like 3100 and there's activity, you'll never get off of it. You know, you have to, before you can do the disconnect or change anything, you have to wait till somebody's talking, and some of these guys are long-winded.
So it ties me up. It doesn't tie everybody else up.
It ties you up.
Got it.
You know, but other than that, it's the same. Some common talk groups. Where are you located?
I'm in Pine Plains in Dutchess County. As I said, I had the radio in New York City. I was hitting a bunch of them. Up here, I'm not sure what's up here.
Yeah, so you'll want to add talk groups. You might want to add are on your hotspot. The Tri-State is a good one. Okay, New York State. Some of these busier ones, people get nasty if you talk too long, like New York State and Tri-State. They get a little nasty if you talk too long.
I know I have all of them in my code. I know I have Tri-State and I have New York State. So all I'm going to do is change the frequency to the simplex of 448. Well,
yes.
On all of them. Okay.
Put in STEM the 31630. That's a good one to have. Put in 3100. That's a good one because there's always activity. And there's others. These are just for you to get started. And put in the 4000 for a disconnect.
Right. Okay. Cool.
And that should do it. You know, I would keep all your hotspot stuff in a separate zone. It's just good bookkeeping. But other than that, it's just bookkeeping.
But that would limit me to 16, correct?
Yeah, but you could put in multiple zones.
Right.
You know.
Right. So I'd have
Okay.
several hotspot zones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you see how we go from the ridiculous to supply. And by the way, to acknowledge Neil, NDG, and Bob, I've heard some similar talk, but we're going to have to, there are so many people at so many different spots. We attempted, Jim, UMP, to share our code plugs. The first thing I got was, well, Paul, that's not a code plug. That's a Excel spreadsheet showing your zones and your channels. But that's how simple it is. And I'm just following mine. I've got 4,000. I learned the hard way, everything that UMP is telling us, and Neil echoed about getting off.
Hold on,
So
Ross.
I do think that when we try to share
Are you there?
code plugs amongst each other, we can maybe think of a simple, maybe we can post on our website, 835,
There.
a
Let me try
way
that.
to
Are you
share,
there?
a way to share these things.
Sorry, I'm on a Zoom call at the same time.
I wonder who that is.
I know
A busy man.
Still in underwriting. I don't know exactly. There you go.
Human behavior is just wonderful. Predictable, like I said early on. So maybe what we can think, and K2LD, and we'll ask Neil when he gets back, we need to think, and Kate, all of us, what's the easiest way for this share? And when Rob finally resolves his issue, we need to get your RTD file in something we can all read so we can shorten the learning curve for people like, well, who is it that's coming on? UEN isn't here today. Bob Hahn's probably never going to go to DMR after this. Mo's, all of us, so we can benefit from this, but that's very helpful. Hal, I know, is thinking about it. Jim, how much time? I think we've gone now, it's 9:30, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. We have 24 hours, but I would say 90 minutes would be a real max for us for this morning, although I will hang around to the bitter end. But Jim, thank you. Do you have 5 or 10 minutes so we can ask 1 or 2 questions? And then
Sure.
All right. Very helpful. Another topic, another question. Mose, I don't know if you can hear me, whether you have something, but let's see, is anybody that hasn't had a chance to ask a question or raise an issue or has a different issue? I'd like to hear that now. Please come. K2BHM, yes. Do I have to unmute? Perfect.
Okay, I'm a total newbie on this. No real experience whatsoever with it. And I'm hearing a lot of different terms that I'm trying to figure out and trying to understand how this whole thing works. So far, what I'm collecting is, like, I just bought a new ICOM 7100 and it comes with D-Star. So if we had a repeater here in Kingston that does D-Star, I could interface with that and go on the 3100 talk group and talk to other people. If I had a Yaesu, I think that's Fusion. I would have to look for a Yaesu repeater, and then I could get on 3100. I could set up a Pi-Star, and would that be a universal translator between D-Star or Fusion so that I could use either one of my radios locally to get on 3100?
I could respond to that. If you have a hotspot, that will allow you to use your C4FM radio, your D-Star radio, and your DMR radio. Okay. Now, in general, DMR has talk groups. And with that, you'll be able to, if you had a DMR radio, you'll be able to get onto DMR radios, DMR talk groups. If you have a C4FM radio, you can talk in rooms to C4FM stuff through that. And if you have D-Star, they have reflectors. All of these are kind of the same basic concept. Now, can you talk from C4FM to D-Star? Or C4FM to DMR, it won't be a universal translator, but there are some talk groups you could go in on DMR and come out on a C4 FM room. Okay, can you talk on your DMR radio and come out on a C4 FM repeater? No. So it won't like be a universal translator. Now bear in mind the cost. The DMR radio you can get for less than a handheld, less than $100, and hopefully with a good antenna you'll be able to hit your local repeater. So the cost is minimal. With your 7100, and that's a good radio, you could hit some D-Star repeaters. If they're not in range, for $90 or $80, you could get like a little hotspot and talk to that. Okay, and talk with any of the, go on any of the reflectors for D-Star, and that your hotspot in effect looks like a little mini repeater, a 10 milliwatt repeater. Okay, so you can still, 7100 is a good radio, and you can still make use of that D-Star functionality through a local repeater, or if that's out of range, through the hotspot. But it won't act like a translator so that you can go from your Yaesu radio to a DMR repeater. It won't do that. But you can do, there's such a thing as protocol translation, where you can go to rooms, reflectors, and talk groups through a dissimilar radio, because it does protocol translation.
Thank you, Jim.
I hope I answered your question.
So basically, at this point, if I have one type of radio and Kate has a different format and Mose has another format, we can't form one common group and talk to each other like we do on the 805.
Not easily. Okay, there are a few talk groups you could meet on. Okay, there are a few talk groups that speak all protocols. Okay, and you could meet on that. But will it be convenient? No. You're better off to just, to simplify this whole thing, you're better off to get an inexpensive DMR radio and everybody get that, and you all have the same radio. So that's, if you want to keep things simple, sometimes better to keep things simple. That's the way to go. But there are talk groups, reflectors, and rooms that you could probably meet in, you know, and it won't be as robust as you might want it to be. You could all meet at a certain place with dissimilar radios. Not recommended.
Okay, so basically we need to pick a certain flavor for the club and stick with it.
Yes, and I would say that D-Star, if you enjoy using it, keep using it, but I'm gonna be blunt here, it's legacy, okay? That's the best way I can describe. What's that?
I haven't set it up, so.
Okay, feel free to use it. You've got it. Folks are still having fun with it. I still use CW, but in the mainstream of digital protocols, it's older and it's now legacy. Okay, there's some things that were very well thought out about it, but it still comes down to it's now legacy. C4FM is a proprietary protocol. I would recommend getting that if you get DMR first, and if you're getting tired of DMR and want to try a different radio, go to C4FM. But I would recommend DMR first and C4FM second, and not to invest any new money in D-Star. It's legacy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm keeping it very simple and giving you my opinion, but I think I'm right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And I see some signals here. Neil, I've unmuted you, and I unmuted you here, so don't blame me. But I'm getting a chat now that shortens my opportunity. Yeah. Let's see. Neil is unmuted. K2LD was shaking his head, and I see Bob Hahn. Are you swatting a fly? Or do you want to talk? But let me go to NDG, KLD, and QAK.
All right. And I'm sorry, before I had to take a phone call regarding the house. I was just going to throw in a quick comment when you were talking about zones. When Jim said that, yes, you can create, multiple zones if you do run out of channels, because at some of these radios, it's only 16 per zone. Another little tip is that if you're going to do that, if you're going to create multiple zones for something like your hotspot, you can make the first 4 or 5 channels of each zone the same. You can repeat channels in zones and make your favorites the first 4 or 5 channels, and then add the rest of them on there. Because I know at least on the MB380, sometimes it's a pain in the neck. You find yourself fumbling to go back to a previous zone. That you can program one of the side buttons to switch zones, but I think it's forward only. So you got to go all the way around the carousel to get back to the other one. So that's one thing. I mean, you heard my opinions on D-Star. I will disagree with Jim in one thing, is that it may seem like it's legacy, but most of these digital protocols have been around about the same amount of time. DMR has actually been around a lot longer than ham radio has embraced it. But ICOM is going to continue to produce new equipment with D-Star. It's because they're, pretty well entrenched in it. And it is an interest. And just like he said with Fusion, I think it's something that people may enjoy experimenting with, but I do not recommend it if we're going to pick a major format or a standard or something we can all fall into for cost reasons, for just universal proliferation. There's so many more people using DMR than everything else, at least in this country. I think that's the direction we would go into. I don't think there's any other question there. So that's how I feel about it. But D-Star is not going away, in my opinion, unfortunately. But
Thank you, Neil. K2LD?
Whoops, sorry. Oh, here we go. I was shaking my head to Jim's question regarding going from D-Star into 3100. That's 2 different formats, so you can't go from A to B like that. In the Pi-Star, you do have the possibility to translate over from DMR to the Fusion and back and forth in those directions, but the D-Star does not go. It's a different codecs, and it will not translate over. So you cannot get to 3100. That's a DMR talk group, and you can't get there from here. That's it.
Thank you, K2LD. QAK? You're muted right now, QAK. And I didn't mute you, but I can see if I can unmute you. It's kind of powerful here, but I don't like the responsibility. I can't find QAK in my list here. We don't hear you yet, QAK. Oh, there you are. Okay.
All right, there we go. Okay, I got myself unmuted too. What I'm taking home with the discussion here is, let me say at the outset, my ICOM has a proprietary digital mode called D-Star. Yaesu has its own proprietary digital mode. So if I want to talk to somebody on D-Star, I probably need to get somebody that's on an ICOM. All right, what I'm getting also from this discussion is that DMR requires something like a Bridgecom systems radio. Can I buy any kind of radio and get onto DMR, or do I need a particular brand or make of radio? That's my question.
UMP?
Okay. Well, you could buy any brand and it will work. There was some talk that the Bofang wasn't doing the complete protocol, but I think that they are now. I like the Anytone. Right now here, I have 2 Anytones. Here's the 878. I have an 868. And over here, I'm going to show you my mobile. If you can see it, I don't know what the lighting is right there. So I have 3 Anytones. I like that. I have 2 MD380s. Okay, and these are older, but they're robust. You know, for they're so inexpensive, they're giving them away. Those work. But if you wanna, if you really want the best radio, and again, personal opinion, I like the Anytone best. That's my preference. There are less expensive ones, and they all work. Be a little bit careful with the Baofangs, but they all do work.
Okay,
So,
yes, I have a Baofeng, but it's old and it's just a backup. Here's what I have as my HT. It's a Yaesu FT65, and I believe that is not capable of doing DMR. Is that correct?
absolutely, Yaesu does they sell certain radios with C4 FM capability, and I have two of them. You look right here. Here's my mobile, the FTM 100D, and I also have a handheld. So no, Yaesu, they have their proprietary formatted C4 FM, and it won't talk DMR.
Right. Okay. So what I really need to do is get another handheld for if I want to go to DMR, and because the handhelds that I can get that are DMR capable are the programming for those radios is only available in Windows. Is that correct?
That's correct. You'll need a Windows computer.
Okay, so I'm talking about less than $100 for the radio and $150 for a computer. So $250 would cost me to get into DMR.
Something like that. Yes. And do you have just what do you use? You use an Apple computer?
I'm using an Apple iMac, and my mobile is an ICOM ID5100. Now, is that capable of doing DMR?
Okay.
In addition to
No. Probably it's capable of doing D-Star. Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
That's not why I bought the radio. I bought the radio because I like the other features of it. D-Star.
Right. And since you have the radio, I would program it to hit your local D-Star repeater. You could have some fun with that. It's not the best protocol. What's that?
Out there, I'm able to get out on the internet and hit repeaters in other locations, other cities, and they answer back to me. But I have not heard any traffic. I've seen any other operators on it, so I'm not sure if I got one little step to take yet on the D-Star. But that's another subject. I won't get into that with you. But so okay, I understand. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Just on the D-Star, Mark in our club, Halabuda, just a wonderful guy, W2UIS, an amazing expert on D-Star, and he's available to us. He's good on QRZ. I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you, Jim. I don't want to abuse this. Maybe one day we can do it again. We're going to listen. We're going to noodle. Amazing, just amazing what I want to thank Neil, about all of you, because we're just participating as a team. I think we need to noodle. We've got the audio of this, thanks to Guy. We'll have a video. I'll try and post that. And we'll go from there. Any final thoughts, advice to us, Jim, before we, and I say goodbye to all of you, and we all go on to the rest of our day. Jim, WA2UMP.
I think you can't go wrong with investing in DMR. The cost to get involved is very inexpensive. It doesn't hurt to have a hotspot goes along with that. You can get one for $80, and that can be when you can't hit a repeater. You still have access. You have your own little mini repeater. Once you get involved, once you get set up for DMR, feel free to drop by on the STEM talk group to the North Star Digital Net. And if you have any questions, we'll be glad to address that. And you could Google the North Star Digital Net to see where, to see if you forget the number of the talk group for STEM, you can see it there. And we meet every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. Wish everybody luck. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Jim. Can you see my little clapping hand? And,
I do. Thank you.
so you can just hit reactions if you want to think, but I'm going to sign, but I'll be here. Sometimes people like to say a few final words. It's open. We're hams. We know we're adults in the room. It's exceeded my expectations. I want to thank each and every one of you. I'm not going to pull the plug on the meeting just yet, but there's my applause, a thumbs up. Jim, we'll be in touch. I'll send you an email. But
thanks, Paul. Let me know if you have any addition, if I could help in any other way.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to sign 73.
73.